Good afternoon. We are so excited to have everyone here tonight. As you know, this is my annual holiday grief session where we talk about holiday grief and ways to get through the holidays. One thing that we know that we're all going to face, we're going to face grief at some point in our lives, but sometimes as Americans, as people, we don't always like to face it, nor do we like to talk about it. Tonight, I have some wonderful guests with me who have very unique perspectives on grief, loss, and death and dying. So I'm excited to get into the show today. I want you guys to realize like this is an interactive show. I want everyone who's out there in our TV land, we'll call it TV land tonight, everyone who is out there, I want you to participate. We want you in the chat box. We want you to talk to us. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear everything that you want to know. And I'm sure this expert panel that I have tonight will be more than happy to help you. One of the things I do want you to know, we're not here to give you solutions and to just try to problem solve, because grief is ongoing. We will never eradicate those feelings connected to grief. But what we can do is learn how to navigate in a healthier way and come up with some skills and some things that can be more helpful than negative. And my first guest tonight is LPC Chris. And I tell her all the time, I just love her little hook. LPC Chris, also known as Crystal Pennick, and the little sister in your grief therapist in Nashville, Tennessee. And we're going to bring her up. Let's bring her on up here. All right. Hey, Crystal, how are you?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Tell us a little bit about your practice and your background and how did you get into grief therapy?
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me here, Danny. You know, this is the time to talk about this, even though throughout the year we do have people grieving, but this is definitely the time when people are struggling. Some of us are struggling with seasonal depression, and some of us are struggling with grief and loss at this time. And so, again, I'm Crystal Pennick, or LPC Chris in social media world. And I am little sister and your grief therapist. So the name of my practice here in Nashville, Tennessee is Tittle Pennick Grief Counseling and Consulting. And just started full time in September of this year. Yeah. So it's been very insightful and very insightful. Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say how I started is because I am a surviving sibling. So my sibling passed away when I was 14 years old from leukemia. And my journey in the grief and loss, it just was so traumatic because you never think that you're going to lose a sibling so young. He was 18.
Wow.
And I just went through so many spaces where it was not restorative for me. Being in high school, one of the guidance counselors told me that I would not graduate from high school with my grades. And that was just, it was so hurtful to me that she knew the situation. My last name is pretty rare. And the only other people in my last name are related to me. And so, it was never a question of how can I help? It was never a question about, we know you're grieving, so let's give you some extra time. No, nothing like that. It was like, you're not going to graduate with these grades.
That's so unfortunate. And me coming from the school world and I'm really passionate about education and being an educator. I'm always an educator at heart. But I do think because of many of the standards that have been placed on us to do basically everything, we're moms, we're dads, we aunties and aunts, we take you to and fro. And I always tell people as a school counselor, sometimes you have to make calls that may not be in the handbook to help that kid get what he needs to get. And I was just thinking about your situation as you were describing it, as to all it would have taken was someone to really connect to your situation, help you through that moment. But sometimes we're so caught up in the busyness of work that we forget, why we got into this profession in the beginning. And I think educators have a difficult time trying to balance and navigate that. Thank you so much, LPC Chris, for sharing that with me today and our audience today. I have another amazing guest. I have Dr. Brian Dixon. Dr. Brian Dixon is so phenomenal. He's a child and adolescent care psychiatrist, and he's the owner of Mindful. I love talking to him because he is so insightful. He has all these great ideas about business, and I like talking to him because we think a lot alike about business and practices and how it should run, and we try to solve all the world's problems with our lunch appointments. Bring on Brian, Dr. Brian Dixon.
Good evening, Danny. Hey, LPC Chris. Thanks for having me on. I'll do my 2-second spiel, and then So I'm born and raised in East Texas, and I am a child and adolescent psychiatrist. So I get to most people always think a psychiatrist is just going to drug you up. No, we don't only do that. We also do a little bit of therapy. So I get to work with patients. I get to work with families. Like LPC Chris was saying, this time of year is super tough for most folks. And we all have our coping skills. Some are not very helpful. Some are helpful. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. And then I hope to help share a little bit about kind of a lot of the biology of how things happen with stress.
That's wonderful.
And my background. So especially when it comes to grief. So I was lucky and blessed to work with kids at a bereavement camp for 2 or 3 years of my career, where, I get to be on campus at the campground and work with them one-on-one as they, many kiddos had lost a sibling or a parent or a grandparent. And so, and then just in my own personal life, I've had lots of folks who have passed for lots of different reasons, and finding ways to cope and keep thriving successfully is its own skill set. So so I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to have you both here tonight. I want to do a quick commercial break to the audience. Again, we want you to participate. This is your opportunity to ask questions. We have an amazing therapist here tonight, and we have an amazing psychiatrist. Some of y'all been wanting to ask stuff about these medications and when is the right time? Why should people get on medication? Ask the questions. This is a great forum to do that. So I want to bring up both of my panelists tonight, and I want to start out with my first question. My first question is all about your first experience in the holidays and how you navigated that first experience with the loss of your loved one. And do you mind if I go first and just share my experience? I've had 2 recent experiences, and one is more recent than the other. So I don't know quite how I'm going to work through that, but I have some ideas. I think one of the things that I love to do right now, speaking on my mom, who died on November the 7th, which is exactly a month tonight. My mom had a feisty attitude. She had a smart mouth. She could get you told with her eyes. She could stomp down, cook, and she really had a kind heart. And I always tell people it's the after fact that I realize what she was teaching me. It comes to me now as to many of the things that she was teaching me along the way. One of the things she talked about, getting over things really quickly, not holding on to things, treating people well. And she always talked about you never know who you're going to need at some point in your life. So treat people with kindness. So things like that come to mind when I think of my mom. I have a cast iron skillet that I think about my mom when I'm about to cook. So you know what I'm going to do during the holidays? I'm going to cook me a good old thing of cornbread. I ain't say corn. I said cornbread. I'm going to get me some cornbread. I'm going to put it up in my mama's skillet, and I'm just going to sit in that moment and recognize my mom is still with me in so many different ways. And I always talk about framing and how we look at things. So I look at that, and I also think about her tea cakes. This year, I'm gonna go through the hard task. I've made them before, but it takes everything. Marcine, I saw you on here. You asked me for some tea cakes. You get some tea cakes this year. So I'm gonna make my mama's tea cakes this year, in honor of her. So those are the things that make me feel close to mom. And I guess it changes my perspective on how I see her not being here. To me, she's ever present. How about you guys? I'd love to start with who'd like to go first?
I want to give it to LPC Chris because this is her jam.
Go ahead, LPC Chris.
I got the ball, y'all. Okay. So I can say my first Christmas and holiday season without my brother was a bit darker. Wow. It was lonely. And I tell this story on my podcast about how I could feel the nights. And winter wasn't really my favorite season anymore. So Christmas and Thanksgiving used to be really my good favorite time with my family and my brother, with my cousin. And my dad is an identical twin. So my cousin is almost like my brother, DNA wise, but all three of us were so tight at a point. But Christmas was just dark, and it felt like it was so heavy on my chest. But what happened was we had neighbors where we grew up. We had neighbors that realized that they also lost someone that they were very attached to. So what they did was they came to our door before Christmas and sang us Christmas carols. And they gave us a wreath. And on the wreath was all the things my brother would like. So they had little toy cars on there because my brother was a gearhead. It had some other decorations on there. And it really did just take a load off because it felt like we were not alone. Like we were not the only ones to grieve. So our neighbors did that for us. So when there was times where it was hard, we would kind of look at that wreath. And I just thank God for neighbors because they always just really checked on us. So that was what helped out, but we definitely had to find out what would work for us for the seasons ahead, because what worked for us back then, we didn't have our brother, so we just had to implement some new things. And that might have meant not having a Christmas tree because my dad didn't want a Christmas tree up for a while. So it could be some other traditions that you implement by choice, so it can help you in process. Yes.
LPC Chris, I was thinking about like how sometimes we go through a grief experience and we try to treat everything the same. But for me, the loss with my mom versus the loss of my sister 3 years ago, both painful losses. However, the loss with my mom affects me in such a different way. I feel like I have a peace about her. I feel like I miss her, but I also have this peace about her because I have so many memories and she was so lit and so who she was. And I can just sit back and think of that. With my sister, I often tell people, like even in sessions, sometimes we grieve the what could have been, what may have taken place, how many more memories we could have had together. And I feel like sometimes with my sister, it was a little bit me wanting a little bit more of that experience with her. So I still grieve the what ifs. Dr. Dixon, I'd love to hear from you. Same question as to navigating that first holiday.
Yeah, so the very first holiday, so my mom died in 2016, and there was a whole bunch of other stuff going on in 2016 with the election and all that. So, and Thanksgiving was always our favorite holiday because she would throw down on the green. She made her hen and dressing because her turkey was terrible, and she knew that. And so we did not. Oh yeah, it's a little dry. So Bob was like, nope, I'm not making turkey and dressing. I'm only doing hen and dressing and her sweet potato pie. But she died literally right before Thanksgiving, about a week before Thanksgiving. Wow. And that first year, it was I didn't understand the term shock until I went through that. You know, even as a physician, I've had the sad duty of declaring someone who is recently deceased. I've been in the room when awful things have happened, but until it comes to you and you're seeing it firsthand, you never really appreciate it. And so I have to give my siblings and my family a lot of credit, because we gave ourselves grace. We were like, hey, this is literally the first holiday right after she died, Christmas right after she died. We just didn't really do anything and just gave ourselves grace and space. And I found that to be very, very helpful for that first year. So for all y'all, I noticed somebody in the chat mentioning that they had a loved one recently pass away.
Oh, wow.
Grace and space, y'all, especially that first year.
Grace and space. I love that. Grace in space. Not trying to feel like we need to do this or we need to do that. We need to try to keep this going. And sometimes we tell ourselves these narratives that honestly, sometimes it was too much for our parents, but they kept it going at the expense of their own health or their own realizing, I really don't want to do this, but I've created this. But sometimes you really need to take care of you. Set some boundaries, know what you can handle, know what you can't handle. And you don't have to be in everybody's face if you don't want to be in everybody's face. It's all about taking care of you and you doing what you need to do. LPC Chris, anything you wanted to add to that?
Oh, I mean, I'm right there with you because exhausted. You know, when you're grieving, emotionally you're exhausted, you feel physically exhausted, and it's like I can't go and do what I used to do. That holiday shopping trip that we used to do, I'm not in the mood for it. I'm overstimulated. I don't want to see nobody. I don't want to spend no money. You know, so all of those things that we have to say, like you said, boundaries, and using our personal choice of how we want to spend the holidays now. Some people go away now. They go away and do a staycation because they don't want to be bothered. Or keep it to more nuclear family versus a bigger family event. Exactly.
I know the first year that my sister died, we all rented like a Airbnb, and it was really so nice because I think we all realized like we needed each other and we didn't need to be separate at that time. And I feel like it was a lot of sacrificing on everybody's behalf, but it was one of the best experiences that we ever had for Christmas. And so we created a different tradition. Now, that doesn't mean we do that every year, but it was what we needed at that particular time. I want to ask the panelists, I want to ask you a question that I had probably some time ago, or someone asked me, and they said, how do you have that holiday meal, or how do you have that holiday I'm thinking about like when you open up presents and the person is not there and you want to have the holiday dinner, but you don't want to bring the atmosphere down. How do you go about doing that? Dr. Diggs.
I'll jump in there because y'all, I don't know. We just, Lord Jesus, we just push through. Like we take our time. We actually created a new holiday because Mama was so like instrumental in who we are as people, as the 5 siblings. And Thanksgiving just didn't feel the same. So we created a new little holiday, which is the Saturday after Thanksgiving. We call it Thanksmas, where we combine Christmas and Thanksgiving.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. And it's just it's a nice homage. And we play games and do all the same things, but we're still not there yet. I mean, it's 2016 was however many years ago. And I don't know that any of us have, kind of quote unquote made it through the grieving process to be able to go and put something back on Thanksgiving. So call it avoidance or whatever. So, and I would love to hear what LPC Chris has to say. But we just avoid the whole thing and created a new thing to just get us through the holidays.
I get it. Sometimes you have to do. LPC Chris, please share.
Yeah, we definitely get it. And that's the thing about it. We have these expectations on ourselves to keep everything the same way. But obviously, it is not the same as it was. And it will never be. And you might want to get back to that when everybody feels like it's appropriate to get back to where you were. But it's not going to ever be the same. My grandma has been gone since 1993. I haven't had a pound cake like hers since agree. So I'm telling you, it changes. It changes. And just, adjusting to those changes, no matter what that looks like. So I do agree. It's not the avoidance of it, because everybody has different feelings and they want to express it in different ways. So we do say that, you can set something at the table for your loved one that's missing, or you could put a picture down to remind them, or remind everybody, or say a favorite memory of that person. Holidays, something funny, a good story, something to have everybody laughing, or having the candle, but also honoring the fact that you all are still together. If you're with
that's beautiful.
Honoring the living. And I think we forget to honor ourselves and honor the living, because we're so focused on what we're missing. But when we focus on who's with us in that missing feeling and feeling, then we start to be like, okay, we're tighter, we're bonded, because these people are still here with me, going through the journey with me, no matter how different it looks or feels for everybody in the family. So honoring.
Yes. I was thinking about this most recent experience. A lot of times we're taught, like, I know me being from, I call it the real South. I'm from Mississippi. And so we're taught to kind of suppress truth and smile through it. But I was thinking about when my mom first died, people will say, what is it that you need? What do you need? How can I be helpful? Or call me if you need me. And I really had to take that into heart today. I had a good friend who really, she lost her spouse. And I said, tell me how I can help. And one of the things she said, I have a large family. We're going to need food, not just for that day, but throughout the week. That really stuck with me, because sometimes we don't ask for the things that we truly need. I had been going home to visit my mom for over the last couple of months. I would say for the last year, at least every other month. I know the last 6 months I was going every month, and I was flying. And so not only am I flying home, you accumulate like food costs and things of that nature. So I said, this time I really wanted to help my family in that they didn't have to think about food costs. And when I did ask, I recognized, like, I got some good supporters. I have some great people in my life who see me, who care about me. I got financial donations, and I also got like the Uber Eats and things like that were so helpful to my family. And that's one less thing that we had to worry about. So sometimes I realize, like, we got to get out of our own way to get to that next place in our journey, because some of the stuff that we just continue to do is not realistic, and it's not truly the truth as to what we need. So I encourage you, when someone asks, either they can or they can't. Ask for what you need. And I just want to say personally, thank you to all of you who have been there for me, sent cards, kind words, financial donations, just been there. Call me. Thank you guys so very much. Thank you. I want to shift to, I got so much that I want to get to. I want to shift to children, because it is so important. And I think there's so many narratives that, sometimes adults have in addition to children. I think about me as a young person. My dad died when I was about 5, and nobody ever told me he was dead. I just know he didn't come back home. I ended up going to a funeral, and I was saying, I think I'm at my daddy's funeral, but I didn't know. And I know people were doing the best they could with what they knew at the time. But me knowing the person I am today, I would have liked to have seen him and have that closure. And so I think about working with kids. Parents, I want you to know this. What you don't talk about, kids will fill in. I'm going to say it again. What you don't talk about, kids will fill in the blanks. And I'm going to tell you now, you think this is your nice little cute, she don't know anything, he don't know anything. baby, they know a whole bunch. They know a whole bunch. And most times they're ready to have that conversation. You just need to have it on their level. So I'm asking you, how should we go about, first of all, how should we go about handling death and talking about death with our children? Dr. Dr. Dixon, how about you?
So I always remind parents, because I work with kids every day. It's my jam. I love working with kids and families. And I always have to remind parents that you model the behavior for kids. They take their cues from you. And so the healthier you are, the more you manage your own grief, the better it's going to be for them. So that, yes, you're going to worry about messing it up. You're going to worry about seeing the wrong thing. And those really high moments of stress, because when somebody dies, and especially if you're the adjacent person and you're having to plan funerals and, pick flowers. And I mean, that's a lot. And so the thing that I stress is just structure, make sure there's some kind of food. If you need, Danny, to your point, if you need help, ask, because we are communal creatures. We are community creatures. Let other people support you during that time, so that the kids have something to eat, because the most important thing for them is just structure. Get them in bed, make sure they have something to eat. If you can get them to school, give them some sense of kind of a routine, because when you get them out of the routine, it gets really tough. And then how you say what you say, to me, be honest, because you're right. If you try to fill in those, if you leave the gaps, they will fill them in themselves. So
yes. Oh yes. LPC Chris, I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Karina. I have been in love with that movie forever, with Whoopi Goldberg, and how she handled the child's grief in that movie.
Okay.
And the thing about it is, there's a scene in there where somebody comes up to, the husband loses his wife, and they leave behind a young little girl. And Whoopi Goldberg is the nanny in this situation. And she tells it basically like what it is. And but the dad is lying about where the mom is, and knowing she has passed. Somebody comes up to the door because the mom had ordered some furniture. Mom was not there anymore. She passed away. So they asked, "Hey, Mr. Swinger, where is Mrs. Swinger? This is order for her." And he tells the delivery man, "Oh, she's in the bathtub." So then hears it, runs to the bathtub, and sits in the bathtub like mom's not here. So not lying to a child.
Yes.
Straight. It doesn't have to be like you're talking to an adult, but giving those messages and saying died. They died.
Yeah, they died.
They passed away, because kids are not going to understand what passed away is. They're not going to understand, oh, mom clocked out. They're not going to say all the stuff that we talk about.
Yes. That's true.
Very specific. Mom or dad died. Brother died. To make it absolute. They're not coming back. And just having that conversation with them, and then also giving them the support and an out, because children, they need the time and the space to process these things, and they need to go about their life and go play too. So giving them support. So do I need to call your friend, your best friend, or do you have a plushie or something that you feel comfortable that I need to get for you before you go to sleep? I'm open for questions. Mommy, daddy's hurt. We're hurt. We're open for questions. You can come to us for anything about this. So being very open and honest.
LPC Chris, I want to talk about, I'm a former school counselor. I will never not be a school counselor. I'm still certified, so I'm still, factually that. But I used to work in what we call our safe rooms, and I was working this one where there was this little kid, and the kid, it was a younger kid, a classmate had died, and I think the language that they were using, that he's gone to heaven, or it's some kind of like ethereal something he could not put together. So what the kid drew on the poster board paper, it was so funny to me, but that's where his head was based on what he understood. He drew a rocket going up to heaven to go meet his friend. And I was like, oh, okay. So I think that's cute, But I also think it's more helpful to meet the kid where they are and really talk about, like LPC Chris said, is using the right language. Died. What does that truly mean? What does that look like? And then you have that part where kids are afraid because, well, does that mean that that's going to happen to me? Sit down and talk to these kids about the truth, and not when you get in the situation. Read some books. There's some bibliography out there. Do some things like that. Some books that talk about death. And like we talked about earlier, if you have a healthy view of death, you can understand that it's part of the cycle of life, and you teach that. And one of the things I always tell people, more than likely you have a good amount of time on the earth, and that's a great way to look at it with kids. Is not lying, but more than likely you got some time. So that's one of the things I really wanted to get out, is being truthful to kids and really having conversations, and teach your child. Do some pre-teaching, because it is going to happen. It is going to happen. Our first stories are how we handle death the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
I really believe it. I really believe it. Until we do the work to reframe and to reconstruct and to do some different things with the narrative. Anyone else want to add anything to the children? I still want to get into that a little bit more. Anything you guys want to add to that? I just don't want to get off of that.
Yeah. So I'd throw out, so kids are really funny when it comes to and part of this is also the coping skill. It's kind of the overcompensation of parents. So when something bad happens, parents often overdo things. Y'all overbuy things. You overschedule them. You know, overly try to entertain them so that they don't go through the same emotions that you're going through. And I'm like, y'all, I mean, they're human beings. They're little human beings, but they're human beings. They're going to be sad. You don't have to jump in and try to save them. Let them go through their emotions. That's okay. You can still give them expectations, right? You can still say, hey, I know this is really, really tough, but I really, really do need you to go take a shower. I'm sorry. That's just how it's going to be. So, especially teenagers, right? So yeah, by you giving them boundaries and expectations, especially when stuff is hard, it's actually very reassuring to them, because that's what they're used to. So resist that temptation to let them just kind of flail around. You can still give them some boxes.
Exactly. Thank you guys so much for sharing that with us. There's a part of what I want to kind of go through is, like, when we experience death, is so most often is unexpected, and it changes our view, and it changes how we see the world. We look at our world as, I'm going to do this tomorrow, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. But with death, it changes the pattern. It changes, and so sometimes it's so shocking that we don't know what to do with the next moment. And sometimes we have to work through that and figure out, what does this confusion mean? Really trying to understand the changes. But what we try to do sometimes is jump over certain things, so we don't have to deal with those hard things, as you said earlier. I do want to talk about, like, piecing the stories together. Like, for me, my story was never pieced together. Dad was in the hospital, never came home. I'm a kid that's gonna think about, like, ooh, is that how death happens? All of a sudden you just don't come back? Have these conversations, and have the conversations with children. Like I say, pre-teaching is everything. Pre-teaching is everything. And oftentimes when we go through the loss, when we go through the death, the whole world changes for us. It changes everything. And I kind of wrote in my notes, it says, grieving is like putting together a puzzle after some pieces have gone missing. We have to find new ways to fill those missing pieces, missing spaces, and create a new picture of our world that makes sense. And what we don't want to do is, we don't want to fill it up with junk and stuff that's not healthy for you. I'm sure Dr. Dixon, LPC Chris, we know how to fill our puzzle with things that are unhelpful to us. But to really do the work, to really go towards that place of healing and getting better, It takes us actually recreating some new pieces, finding some new pieces, finding some different spaces. Let me ask you, and Jasmine, you can just tell me, do we have that video up? Because I do want to talk about that video, but I do want to ask you guys, what are some ways that, just give me some ideas as to how people can cope with these losses. Are there any like tools that they can use? And you've given a lot of them, but are there things that you have in your go-to bucket list?
Oh yeah, and it's different at every transition of life. And for me, what I had at 14 is not the same as 41.
Exactly.
And then there's things that I can afford more that I could do at 14 and stuff I'm more exposed to now than I was at 14. But I realized that it's fun for me to be able to implement and try new things because I know how fast life can be. Losing a brother at 18 really placed me into asking at 14 my own, mortality. And, at 14, how are you thinking about your own mortality? So it forced me to thinking like, I don't have a lot of time. And now that fuels some anxiety about doing and wanting to have everything all at one time, which I had to process through that too and calm it down and say, I do have time, Lord's willing, I do have time.
Yes.
But implementing things like going somewhere far away by myself and just exploring different cultures, different language, different foods, and that my brother never got to experience. And just knowing that, hey, I can do that. I can be able to do that. I took myself to Jamaica one year. I took myself to California by myself. And people always ask me, why do you do this stuff by yourself? Because it fuels me. It heals me to be able to go into the forest, to go into the water and be in the elements. And I think that's something that I have implemented in my later years that I know helps me heal, helps me be away from the house and come back fueled to do the work that we do. This work also is helpful too. This healing is also helpful. Being able to give back and understanding and have empathy has definitely helped me in this healing process.
That's beautiful. I was thinking the day before my mom died, I had a presentation that I had to do the following day, and I didn't let them know that anything was going on. But at the end of it, I said, I thank you for this opportunity, because I know my mom, who passed away last night, would have wanted me to keep going on. For me, that was my way of honoring her. Me knowing Annie Ross Bell, she's always like, boy, you better do what you're supposed to do. I'm going to be all right. That kind of thing. And so those are the things that I can take on, I can take with me to get through the next day. Dr. Dixon, I'd love to hear some of your tricks of the trade. And you told me too, you were going to talk about the mental parts of it and what's happening in the brain. I want to hear all of that.
Yeah. So one of the things that happens with any type of trauma, especially when someone dies, is that it activates your autonomic nervous system. That's your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight nervous system, y'all. And so your fight or flight nervous system is there to help you survive, to help you get through, excuse my French, help you get through shit, right? If a bear walks in this room right now, I'm running. That's your sympathetic nervous system, because it helps you respond really quickly. Well, the hiccup is when someone close to you dies, especially when it's unexpected, your sympathetic nervous system goes into overdrive. You're constantly idling at a really high rate, which means that you're going to start eating more, because that's just what you do, especially carbohydrates. You're not going to sleep very well, because it's really hard to get your idle back down. And then one thing that we all do, and we have to be super careful about this, is that we tend to then drink more alcohol. And y'all, alcohol, it works on a system in your brain to actually help you calm down. But the problem with alcohol is that you build a tolerance to it, meaning you're going to need more of it for it to work. And if you stop drinking, you'll start to feel worse. So it creates this cycle. And so y'all, especially during the holidays, I cannot stress this enough with Uncle Leroy and everybody else. Be very thoughtful of your drinking over these months, because it can make you, alcohol disinhibits you. It literally will make you start to say things you shouldn't be saying. And so just watch your alcohol intake as best as possible while you're making all your other new family memories.
And Dr. Brian, and some of us have a tendency, we don't need the alcohol to be out there and saying some stuff we don't need to. So please don't add it to the conversation. And as you know, holidays are definitely the times that we need to be mindful. We're going to have good times, you know, be mindful that, you know, we want to keep everything civil and people in a good place. I'd love to, Tracy, I want to talk about that a little bit. Tracy said, when my mom died, I had to learn how to see life again. Oh my gosh. My world was totally different. And I kind of want to hang out in that space for just a second. Your world was totally different. Sometimes we do everything to try to avoid that space of just not feeling the same, or we try to create something, a pseudo type of something. But sometimes you got to accept that, you know, it doesn't look the same. It doesn't feel the same. It doesn't, you know, and like I woke up this morning and I wasn't thinking about, you know, this was a month ago, my mom, you know, died, but my body felt it. It's interesting. And I think I always tell people your body remembers sometimes what we don't. And I felt some kind of way the whole day, and it hit me. Oh, this is that day. It's exactly a month. And I had to take some time. You know what I did before this? I laid in the bed for like 2 hours. I just needed to catch my breath. I needed some time to just grieve. I needed some time to just reach out to my sisters. We have a good relationship in the sense of just kind of talking about where we are and checking on each other. I really embrace that. If you have people who understand what you're going through, bring them in. Don't bring those people who are going to tell you you need to cut it off, because it's time. It's never time. You take your own sweet time in knowing when you need to move to that next phase, even if it's a next phase. But we're talking about seeing that world again. I'd love to hear from Dr. Dixon, just kind of talking about how that feels and what you take from that point that Tracy made.
So the thing that hit me the most, and LPC Chris alluded to this earlier. So I will never, I'm 43. I don't know how many more years I have on this earth, but I will never, ever, ever have a lemon icebox pie like Mama made it, because she just made it in a way that nobody made it. And the part I'm a little bit angry because she never wrote her recipe down. Like, so nobody has it. None of my aunts, not any of my brothers, not my sister. And my life is totally different. And you would think, oh, it's just a pie. But I mean, for us, because we grew up like dirt poor. And so when Mama would spend some money to buy that carnation condensed milk and get the graham cracker crust that was already pre-made, I mean, we thought we were highfalutin. And so it symbolizes so much for me. And so, yeah, my life will be different. And now I'm instead of trying to replace it with something like you said, Danny, I'm just going to sit in it. And you know what? I won't have that pie ever again. And I can still taste it. I can smell it, and I will appreciate it. And I will just kind of keep moving.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. I love that. LPC Chris, anything that you can connect to Tracy's statement about seeing the world, just everything is going to look different.
Everything's going to look different, you know. And we talked about recipes and things of that nature. I recently went home to my dad's hometown, to Montgomery. My dad went to Atlanta. I was in Montgomery with his family, but with my family. And in the house, I could just go and reminisce about the times where I was with other family members. And I remember so much of tearing my auntie house up because we were so rough as kids. And it just, you know, it took me back. It made me sentimental, but it also pulled me. It also made me feel a way that I'm like, I got to be with these people that I lost.
Yes.
My other auntie also passed in 2019. So, and my great aunt just passed. So it's like I got to spend so much time with these people, even though my brother was limited time. But I was like so excited that I got to grow up with these people, and they molded my life. I would not be here if it was not for these people that I lost and all of their personalities. And my mom would tell me, "Oh, you look just like your auntie," and sometimes I like her, and I take that and I'm thinking, okay, I know, I'm Judy, but yeah, people see me, you know, that haven't seen me since I was a kid, and they don't even remember my name. They're like, "Oh, I know you, Judy Ann Niece." I just know. So it's just one of those things where I feel solemn because I'm staying alone. My dad is remarried, and I don't go with him as often to Montgomery. But it's just like a powerful thing now, even though it's sad too, that I was a part of this thread of good people. And that's what I take with me.
That's awesome. Jasmine, who is my director of the show, she said something, and we talk all the time. We're not just business people. We actually are friends. And she said she reaches for her phone to call her mom all the time and then remember that she can't. Oh my gosh. I just did that yesterday. And I was just like, you know, I had that feeling like, oh, it's time to call mama. Can't call mama. Can't call. And we ain't talk long because she'll get off the phone to some more mess that's going down. Next best thing. But we didn't talk long, but it's something about recognizing, like you said, that pie, you know, those different things, LPC, Chris, and Tracy, little things like that won't ever be what they were. And sometimes you just have to embrace like, oh, it was good while it was happening. And I have so many good memories and it felt good and things of that nature. Let's get to the next question real fast. So Becky had a question some time ago. Sometimes we have the question of what should we say? What should we not say? To people who are grieving during the holidays. I sometimes think I did this little thing where I was just talking about how people come up to you and they say certain things that just probably you shouldn't say. And I remember one in particular where it talks about, yeah, if that was my mama, I'd still be picking myself up off the floor. You're just so strong. You're just so this and that. No, I'm just not falling out at this moment. That doesn't mean I'm not falling out in my spirit. And so sometimes we unintentionally minimize somebody else's experience because we're trying to make ourselves feel better. If we want someone to feel better, one of the things I really want to tell people, if you can just do this, be quiet and sit across from someone and just listen to them. They don't need you to do anything. They don't need you to pat them. They don't need you to tell them. Sit across from them and just listen. I believe that the stories live on forever. I always say, just tell me about such and such. Tell me about who they were to you. What made them? What made you the favorite grandchild? What made you the favorite child? Tell me about how holidays were. And before you know it, people gather stories. They gather some more pleasant memory. What we tend to do, we tend to stay in that final cycle versus forgetting that we had a whole totality of life with this person. I want to ask you, LPC Chris, this question about Becky Southern. Like, what can we say to grieving families during the holidays? Anything that you kind of go to?
Yeah, to honor themselves in this season and every feeling, every emotion, to honor that whatever comes up and know that joy and sorrow can live in the same house. You know, sometimes we don't give ourselves permission to even feel happy about a situation because we're in grief. but we can do both. We can do both. Feel both in 24 hours. We can feel all the gamut of emotions, but just know and preparing them for that, and not saying anything like at least blah, blah, blah. Don't do that. Don't do that. But just make sure that you're supportive of every emotion. And how can I support you? What is it that you need me to do? Do I need to? You want decorations? If not, we'll just leave it alone. Is there something I can do? Can I pick you up and take you somewhere? But be able to say, like you said, sitting in silence, because that's what we used to do. We used to, our ancestors used to go to somebody's house and sit with them, bake food, clean up their house, take their kids somewhere, make sure the kids stay at their house. That's the stuff that we used to do when we were more of a village.
Exactly.
But sit with them, be in the ancestral.
Exactly.
We used to.
And LPC Chris, and sometimes you got to see like your family looks different. Maybe when you're away from home. I remember I had one of my friends die, and I'm telling you that Marcine and her in the family. I'm gonna call them my family. They came over, they went in my refrigerator, pulled stuff out, started cooking stuff, and I'm like, wait a minute. But you know what? That was the best thing that they could have done. I just needed to be around other people at that moment. But I so appreciate little things like that. And I'm not the kind of person would say I need that. But I love when people sense like they know how you are. They know that you come from a large family. They know that those are the kinds of things that matter to me. And just kind of asking someone, like you said, what do they need? Dr. Dixon. Anything with this question?
The only thing I'll say is just what you said. Tell me more, right? Those 3 words. Tell me more. Tell me more about them. Tell me more about what y'all did. Tell me more. Tell me more. Tell me more. And then let them talk. And like you said, just sit and take it all in. I think that is amazing. And I don't know how long we're going tonight, but I have an idea for all you, especially Black folks on this thing, about some skills, some
come on, talk to us. Talk to us.
Well, I don't want to commandeer anything. So, but here, I'll go real fast. So Black folks, we have this tendency to not document, or we live in the moment, which is great. And so during this holiday season, it's great to live in the moment, but we need to do a better job of documenting our history. And y'all, Google has free email. And what I did with the family and what we do is I created just a generic account like Dixon Family Memories at gmail.com. Everybody, then when you're taking your pictures and you uploading and blah, 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 put them all in a cloud and then share the password with everybody so that you can have those videos, those photos, and everybody has access. Because what happens when somebody dies is nobody, we got to get pictures for this, we got to get that, and nobody has anything. And we live in an age now where it's free, y'all. So please just set something up for you and your whole entire family. And I have found that to be very helpful.
It's interesting you say that, because I gave my mom this book and I knew it would be meaningful to me. I'm a person, I love like keepsakes. And so it was a history of her life. And that was about 10 years ago. I searched my mama's bedroom high and low until I found that book. And for me, that's another level of comfort, because her words live on. She has so much in that little book that matters to me. Like you said, Dr. Dixon, we need to start, putting that stuff down in paper to where, kids, grandkids, the next generation can know who grandmother was, because it's so much good out of that. And, our counterparts, generally, they know their history. I do want to add this. I want to show this video really, really quickly. But Tina said something real fast. I don't want to do that just yet. Tina, could you put her statement up of something about how they lived? Instead of how did they die, as how did they live and embrace the memories? That's my sister, y'all. She real smart. But all my siblings are very, very smart, and we have so many different gifts. And that's the thing I loved about us as a family. all of us have our unique strengths, and we maximize those strengths. And I just want to tell them I appreciate them for everything that they've done to be supportive to me. But how did they live? That is so important, and it makes a difference. I want to see that video real fast. If we can put that up, just talking about things that we.
There's something we don't talk about, even though it affects each of us. All of us. It's something we carry wherever we go, the inevitable result of losing the people we love. That something is grief. Even if we're not grieving now, we carry the knowledge that someday death and grief will visit us and the people we care about. But we try so hard to avoid it. We try to shut it out. We mean well, but we don't know the right words to bring comfort. Far too often, we simply say nothing. We need to get better at grief.
And my final thoughts, I thought that was so appropriate in just understanding we've been taught as a culture of people to suppress, to minimize, to not talk, to not feel. I want to encourage you to go against that. I want to encourage you to go against that and find someone that you can connect to, someone that you can talk to, someone you can sit with, someone who understands your story and is not going to try to sabotage it and make you stop because it makes them feel uncomfortable. This is your grief. Handle your grief in the way that you see fit so that you can live a better tomorrow, be better to your family, to the kids, and things of that nature. Final lasting thoughts for my panelists. You guys have been phenomenal. Dr. Dixon.
You are enough and you are wonderful. Take care of yourself.
Hey, yes, I love it. I love it. Thank you again, Dr. Dixon. LPC Chris.
Yes, we are not treating grief as if we can stick it in the microwave and in 2 minutes it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Our emotions, our feelings go. So yes, I concur with the good doctor to feel your feelings and know that you can honor those things that come up and be able to have those supports.
Mm-hmm. And I want to end with my favorite quote by my favorite grief therapist in the world. I had an opportunity to see him in action, to work with him. And he says, death may end a life, but not necessarily a relationship. And I want to change that a little bit. Death may end a physical life, but not necessarily a relationship. Dr. Robert Niermeyer. The relationship lives on. It's all about you and voicing the relationship, bringing life to the relationship and talking that person up. When you stop talking, the person dies. Talk, share the stories, talk about them. I'm telling you, you will start to heal in a much better way. We love you. Thank you guys so much to our sponsorship for this show, my panelists, Project Smith, I thank you so much for partnering with us on this project. We do this annually, and she always renders her time for us, and I'm just thankful for that. Jasmine, thank you so much. And my panelists, let's give it up for those panelists. Great information, great insight. And I thank you for being a part of this broadcast. Share it with someone. Everybody's going through something. Share this. Let somebody know there are other people who are going through the same thing, but we're working together to get through. Take care. I will see you guys on the next go round.